Okay, guys, are you ready? Because the family's going to be turning up in, I don't know, about 15 minutes or something. So just need to get everything sorted. Yassine, can you tidy up a little bit as well, please? So I'm going to go and get changed. About 15 minutes, yeah, and they'll start knocking on the door. My name's Stephen Longdon. I live in Greater Manchester. My family are all a traditional English family, but we're a mix in terms of religion. We have Christians, we have Muslims, and we also have non-believers in my family. I decided at the age of 20 to become a Muslim. And I discovered through my father's family history research that my great-great-great-grandfather had also converted to Islam in 1898. Hey Dad, hi Mum, how are you doing? Thanks for coming. Come on in. Rosie and Yassine at home. Nice to see you. Sorry about the weather.
Yes, Manchester.
Manchester weather.
Good morning, Rosie. Hello. You made it. Yes. Oh, you okay?
I'm a teacher. My wife is Rosina Chowdhury. She is an optician. My children, Issa's a medical doctor. He married a couple of years ago. And my younger son, Yassine, he is a concept artist. My father is Brian Longdon. He is in his 80s now, retired. His profession throughout his working life was a motor mechanic. And my mother, who's also retired, similar age, and she was a school secretary for a long period of her career, but also she worked in the cotton mills when she was a young woman, which is where she met my father, just across the street. Let's see. It sounds like our kids arrived. Hello.
Hi. God, he's as tall as you now.
He is, isn't he? I was thinking that myself. Come in. Come in, come in. My sister, Christina Longdon. Christina is a historian by training. She's a published author. Ruby is my niece, Ruby Agnew. And Ruby is a student at Manchester University. And Greg Agnew, he's my nephew. I had previously been practicing Christianity for a few years, was very interested in religions in general, knew that I wanted to go into university to study a range of religions in depth. I became a Muslim when I was 20 years old, and that followed a period of studying overseas. I lived in Egypt for a year and studied modern Arabic.
Are we boring you?
Always, yeah, always. No, I'm joking. How are you? All right?
I'm all right. You're reading a good book there.
Yeah. Well, I was just, with you coming today, I think I mentioned to you on the phone the other day that I'd been reading through the book again from start to finish. And whenever you read a good book, you always find a few new things that you're not kind of focused on or noticed the first time you read it. And I mean, if you think about his age when he was born, Robert Rashid, I was just wondering, from your point of view, having written this and knowing him in so much detail, what would you say are the kind of main events, influences in his life that kind of led him down this path towards Islam?
I think it was his own religious background and his upbringing and his values and the times that were changing. I didn't anticipate it being so political. I thought it was going to be more of a religious book, and it isn't. It's become religious, political and social, and that's what I loved about it.
I'm surprised you say that about the politics. I mean, the fact that he was a politician, he was able to be a politician, he was able to even be a candidate to be a politician, that wouldn't have happened at the start of the 19th century. It was only through the changes in the electoral law that allowed working people like him from humble backgrounds to even have a vote, let alone stand as a candidate in a political election, local or otherwise.
I'm just thinking, when I'm writing this to begin with, why did he convert to Islam? And then it just became massive. And that's the bit that I love, which is, why does anybody change their religion and their value system, if you like? It's not just because of a religion. There's so many other factors. And that's the bit that I'm curious about. Robert Rashid Stanley was one of the earliest recorded converts to Islam in the British Isles. He became a Muslim in 1898. Before that, he was also an amazing Victorian mayor, and he was a working-class grocer who specialised in the tea business. And he lived in Stalybridge, although he was born in Cardiff, and at the age of 10, he came back up to Stalybridge to be with his extended family. And he was basically looked after by his uncle, John Stanley, who'd made money in the iron business. He basically educated himself, and he was from a family that really treasured education. So in those days, people didn't go to school until the 1870s, when the government made it compulsory for children to attend school. But he came from a family that encouraged people to learn to read, to write, to become literate. And in those days, if you were lucky enough to access books, that was fantastic. But most people read newspapers, or they had somebody in the family that read newspapers. And I think that was the part where he started thinking for himself. He was surrounded himself by people that read newspapers and read books and discussed the world, not just what was happening in their own town and their own village, but what was going on overseas.
Surely, yeah, just go ahead.
Rolling. Ready? Yeah. Jeffrey Nash, take one.
The late Victorian age was the often called the high age of imperialism, when Britain's control spread throughout the world. And as an empire, Britain was considered to have the largest number of Muslim subjects of any other empire. So when we think about people who converted to Islam at the end of the 19th century, we must be conscious of the scope of the empire.
There were a number of Muslims that were beginning to come into the UK at different class levels. We had rich visitors, a few. There were students coming in. And of course, there was a very large number of working class Muslims who were part of the British merchant fleet at that time, especially with the arrival of the steamships. In cities where there were docks, ports, particularly Liverpool, which was the main arrival point for the steamships, there would have been a number of Muslim sailors wandering around the streets, quite a considerable number. They certainly, I have photographs, early photographs, where you can see Ottoman dress amongst the top hats and the tailcoats of Liverpudlians.
Okay, so, yeah, Dad, tell us, when did you first discover about Robert Stanley's conversion to Islam?
It was when I finished work, made redundant, glad of it, and I decided to do my family history. And the very first person I went to, second cousin, he presented me with the this crescent.
Yeah.
Put that on the table in front of me. And then
So that's the original, right?
this is the original.
From 1907?
Yes. He opened it there. He said, "There's your great-great-grandfather, Robert Stanley."
Was that the first photo you'd ever seen?
Yes. Apart from the mayoral photograph.
You've seen that one?
Yeah.
So that's the mayoral photograph,
Yes.
when he was the mayor of Staley Bridge?
Yes. And
Well, why'd you say that? What's the main difference?
his beard's white.
So it's
mine.
older.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's older,
And the
that's all.
headgear.
That's, yeah, and the headgear, of course.
So as soon as you saw the fez, did you know it was a fez?
I didn't take it in at first. I just thought, you know, Crescent magazine, grandfather. At first, I didn't take it all in.
Yeah.
And then I looked a bit further. I read a bit while he allowed me to look through it. And I just came to the conclusion, well, he's a Muslim.
And what did you do then?
I went home in shock. And that night I phoned you.
Yeah?
You were in London at the time.
Yeah.
I phoned up, I said, "You better sit down, Steve."
I know it. I remember it to this day.
I explained it all to you, and the phone went silent.
Yeah, I was in shock too. I think we're all in a bit of shock, weren't
For
we?
quite some time,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, we were.
Let's not go there.
How and when you first found that?
It's a bit vague, really. But we were told that a relative in Congleton had this fez. So we went to visit him, me and Stephen, and they presented us with this. And we thought, is it a show business thing? Is it Tommy Cooper's had it or something like that? And then we looked at it, and it's more of a genuine fez than a showbiz fez. So it's got to be Robert Stanley's.
And the uncle, I remember from the conversation, said that it had been passed down through the family.
Yes, yeah.
It's obviously been passed down to generations with some import. You know, this is an heirloom, a family heirloom.
It's too well made, and
It is too well made.
it's too well made for a show business fez.
Do you want to explain when we found the pin?
I think we found him in Mother's belongings when she passed away.
Yeah.
And I looked through several things and came across this. I thought, Star and Crescent, it's got to be Robert Stanley's.
So it was her great-granddad's.
Her great-grandfather, yeah.
Her great-granddad's.
Yeah. I saw it a few times before she died.
Yeah.
But when she died, I took possession of it.
Her only information she could ever give us about her great-granddad having converted to Islam was that he had been apparently what was known as a retrobite, which means somebody who swore off alcohol. Were you aware that he'd owned a pub, or did you only know that he'd been a mayor?
I knew that he owned the pub because my grandfather told me.
And did your grandfather ever work there with him or anything?
I don't think so.
Right. But he had that pub for 18 years.
Yes.
And in that 18th year, he sold the pub, and then he became a Muslim within a space of a couple of months, and then he moved to Manchester.
Yes.
We know that he still carried on being a magistrate, because he had his role, didn't he? Former mayor, you carry on being a magistrate. But he just then landed just down the road in Staley Bridge. Robert first became aware of what being a Muslim was from his background with the Christian Israelite groups. So he was brought up within the Christian Israelite sect. They followed the Abrahamic tenets, which was we eat kosher meat. That's how we would have eaten as a child. The men all had to grow beards. They followed the Abrahamic laws of wearing certain types of clothing and observing the Jewish Sabbath, but believing that Christ was the Son of God and was going to return. So he was really interested in religion as an international issue. And then he met David Urquhart, who was a diplomat who had been sent to Turkey really to spy on the Ottoman Empire and to find out what was going on there, who came back with a very different view that he went with as to what was happening, and with regards to the way that the Turkish people lived their lives, in particular, the way that Islam was lived on a day-to-day basis. And he came back with interesting news and interesting views on the way that people lived in Constantinople in particular. And Robert said he met him and he changed his views on the world, and not necessarily to do with Islam. So he became quite disillusioned with Christianity, particularly in that part of Manchester. There were big fights between the different Christian groups, the Church of England in particular. I think they really made him feel quite disillusioned with the way that people were behaving and the hypocrisy that was going on. The day-to-day treatment of ordinary people, I think, angered him. And he saw that the church was being used as a political tool. And then he began to learn more about Islam, and he was just curious. So that's when he wrote to the Sultan and said, I can read an English translation of the Quran, but it's written by a Christian, so I can't trust that. So he took it upon himself to try and find out more, which is what led him to Quilliam. He had read about Quilliam's work in Liverpool in converting people. He met Quilliam, and then he converted in 1898 himself to Islam.
If we go back historically a little earlier, the word used for conversion to Islam was going Turk. It was used in quite a negative sense because, of course, to go Turk meant that you were in some way becoming an ally or betraying your own nation to take on a Turkish identity.
Well, I think the fact that, you know, we never found a diary or anything like that, like no one wrote his biography or whatever, but the fact that you got such a strong sense of who he was, you were able to write kind of made-up conversations that may or may not have happened just through court records and newspaper articles. You got such a strong sense of who he was just by how he acted and what he did for society and what steps he took to make the world a better place. Yeah. He was just, you know, the fact you managed to write that, I think is very impressive.
But it was also his sense of humour as well. You just reminded me there, because we do have one of the very few times that we actually hear his voice. It's in those letters to the newspapers, isn't it, and to the Prime Minister. And I just love the fact that he'll write to anybody, or write to the Prime Minister, or write to the Times, or write to the Sultan, and I'll give him my opinion. I think we're all a bit like that
so
in our family.
Granddad does still.
Yeah, Granddad.
Granddad will write to anyone.
Everybody is worthy of our words. But he was really sarcastic and funny, wasn't he, about international issues and, you know, stuff that your ordinary person would be perhaps not care about as much. It really got to him, and he just felt he had to say and do something and have an effect with his insight on the world.
That's very much Stephen, actually.
Yeah, it is.
He says that if it's something he wants to get across, so it kind of who he's saying it to, if it's something that's worthwhile saying, he'll say it very diplomatically and very carefully. He knows all the right words, but he won't care if people think badly of him, or, you know, if he upsets the cart. He doesn't care. What he wants to say, he will say.
And he wrote to whoever he wanted to. And it obviously attracted attention from people like Quilliam, because he was writing to Quilliam.
Abdullah Quilliam was actually the founder of the Liverpool Muslim Institute, which my great-great-great-grandfather, Robert Rashid, was the vice president of the institute.
And he was snipping out little newspaper articles and sending them to Quilliam of interest and writing a little, and then Quilliam would publish from Robert Stanley in Ashton-under-Lyne. He sent a really interesting article about what's happening in Armenia. Shortly after this huge international crisis happened, which was called the Bulgarian atrocities, And so this huge wave of protest happened in Britain, and it became very, very political, and everybody had to stand up and cry out. And he was the first person ever in the country to say, well, I'm not doing that because I've looked into this. I understand what happened. I'm not going to be pushed into making a big political statement. I'm not going to do that. And because of that, he was absolutely vilified. His name was mentioned in Parliament. You know, who is this mayor who won't join calling the meetings against the Ottoman Empire? And he said in his interview with Quilliam in the Crescent years later, it was really hard for him at that point because people who he considered to be his friends turned against him because of his stance. I think that's why he just had enough. He said, look, I've done my time as the mayor. I've done my service. I'm really deeply upset by the way that you've treated me, and you've not seen it the way that I've seen it. And he was bad-mouthed. I've seen what was written about him in the local newspapers.
We know that he's buried in a cemetery that's attached to St. Paul's Church in Stalybridge, which is a Christian church. We know through my sister's research that he and 7 members of his family are actually buried in that same place. We don't have evidence of a service card or diaries or any memoirs that suggest he was buried according to the Christian rites and rituals. All we know is certainly in 1907, 4 years before he did die, he was very clearly and definitely and openly a Muslim. Allahu alam, what happened after that?
All of us in our lives, how we present ourselves to other people, we like to present a certain image of ourselves. Even more so after you've died, your family tend to remember the bits of you that they want to remember. So I think in my own family, it might have been, there could have been an element of World War I had just broken out. Germany had allied with Turkey, and it would have been quite dangerous in certain spheres to say that you were a Turkophile, that you had a relationship with a lot of people from Turkey, that you'd written to the Sultan and the war had broken out. So it might have been less of a let's forget that bit and then the news story develops, as opposed to we will deny that. It never happened.
Should we go and have a little wander outside? Because I don't know about you, I could do some fresh air.
Yeah, why not? If it's not raining.
Well, we're in Manchester, love, so good luck with that. We've always had a massive emphasis on working class history, which I think Robert Rashid reflects. But you tell you what, I'm actually looking forward to learning more about these middle and upper class Victorian converts, to learn about these people from another type of life, you know, and learn about them and perhaps...
Don't you want me to teach you?
Yeah, well, you know, maybe kind of challenge some of the prejudices I've got about other people from different backgrounds.
Maybe Ruby can teach you.
Yeah, I'm sure Ruby can, because...
yeah, I kind of tell her about it all the time.
Yeah, who better to have challenged, or be challenged by than the next generation?
What do you know about the other Victorian Muslim converts?
Not much. I know the basics. I think they're all very fascinating figures that do deserve more attention that they have got historically. But I'd love to know more. Well, the fact that Robert was buried as a Christian while there is a massive Muslim graveyard in Liverpool, so I'd be interested to know why he isn't buried there.
Yeah, because he was massively attached to that community.
Yeah.
We know that's probably where he got the information, the courage, the support maybe to convert, and that's where the first known purpose-built, commissioned mosque in the country, or at least in the northwest of England, was built.
Yeah.
And had probably the largest, most active community, certainly of converts as well.
Maybe you can take her on a road trip.
I think we should go on a road trip.
Yeah?
Yes, I like the idea of a road trip.
I'd come, but I would never get out of the car with my back, so, you know, I would just really ruin it for you.
That sounds like the worst excuse.
That does.
The usual
I'm lying in the back of
excuses.
the car.
Being in Manchester, the first obvious place, I think, for us to perhaps explore is nip on to the motorway down to Liverpool.
Sounds good to me.
And check out the Liverpool Muslim Institute.
The Liverpool Muslim rivalry. Liverpool-Manchester Muslim rivalry.
And, you know, who knows where we'll go from there?
I would say that he lived the most amazing life. And I look at even sentences that I read that he said and the views that he had. And I'm sure I drive my children and my family mad by sometimes pausing and thinking, if he was around now, what would his take have been on this situation that's going on in our local area or in the world? And so in a really strange way, I do feel like I knew him, and I feel I've had this privilege of a man who was my great-great-great-grandfather, of knowing him. And it sounds crazy saying that, but I do feel that I spent that much time researching his life that I got to know him. And that's probably quite an unusual thing to have done in my life.
Come on, Rube, let's go. You ready?
Yep. Somebody forgot something. Your book. Right. Your book. Behave.
Bye-bye.
Watch his driving. Bye.
Love you.
Right, off to Liverpool.
Yeah, let's go to Liverpool. The
Great.
city where it all began.